G'day guys, how are you going? So the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105, a tank many of you have been waiting for, is being released very soon, and you would have been waiting for this especially if you have the current Kanonenjagdpanzer 90mm. Now let me just say, I have asked Wargaming and they have said that if you have the 90mm, you still might or might not get the 105, so don't hold your hopes up too high because they might not release it, but if they do, awesome. If they don't, then I guess that's just a big shame. But let's get into the question, is this new tier 8 tank destroyer worth your money? We'll start off by taking a look at its gun, which is really what most people are going to be looking at. Because apart from the 105mm gun that this tank has, there is nothing different about this tank. So as the name obviously suggests, this tank has a 105mm cannon, which is of course different to the 90mm cannon on the standard current Kanonenjagdpanzer. But let's start off with the bad. Now this tank has a pretty poor DPM of 1950, which is I think the lowest at tier 8 for all of the tank destroyers, which is obviously not a good thing considering that tank destroyers, well, their whole point is their gun. And you definitely do notice this lack of DPM when you are playing the tank. It is not quick firing. When it does hit, it's good because it has 390 alpha damage because of its 105mm size, but apart from that, you definitely notice the delay. Also, the gun handling feels okay at best. I mean, it definitely does hit the majority of its shots, you might say, but it does have pretty poor hidden dispersion values, and that means that you've really got to aim at your target if you want to make sure you hit them. It does have a 1.8 second aiming time, but the bloom is pretty massive on the gun, so yeah, you definitely do notice that this tank is not immensely accurate. But enough of the negative, let's talk about the positive of this gun, because this gun is still better than the 90mm version. The penetration on the APCR standard shell rounds is 268mm, which is massive. In fact, it's pretty much second only to the Swedish S-tanks at tier 8. Also, the shell velocity is really great at just below 1500 meters per second, which is only really second to the AMX CDA, the really sneaky French tank destroyer, which is very similar to this tank. And what that means is that you barely need to lead your shots when you are firing at a target, so this does make the gun more accurate. Gun depression is really nice as well. It is 8 degrees, and this is a low tank, so it means you don't have to expose too much of your tank when you are firing over, say, a ridgeline. Though I recommend you don't expose any of your tank if you don't have to, because this thing has no armor. 30mm at the front and the sides of the tank, and 8mm at the rear. This thing will be an absolute arty feast. And also keep in mind that this tank does only have 1050 hit points, which is not the lowest at tier 8, but is definitely close to being the lowest at tier 8. And considering that pretty much all guns tier 8 and above do at least 390 alpha damage, this tank is very prone to having half of its hit points wiped off in one hit. So do keep in mind that this thing shouldn't be exposed. But all of that is kind of why Wargaming blessed the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105 with insane mobility. This thing has a top speed of 70 kilometers per hour, and it will reach its top speed of 70 kilometers per hour because its horsepower to ton ratio is just below 20. And that means that this thing can just completely go and surpass so many medium tanks, so many light tanks. It's really crazy when you're driving this tank. Also, with a tank traverse speed of 46 degrees per second, this thing can pretty much run rings around most medium tanks. Obviously it won't, especially if you get tracked, but this thing is super duper fast. But it really does have to be, because otherwise this tank has no armor, as I've said, and if you are in a bad position, you need to get out of that position. Now, the way that I play this tank is I use binoculars, a camo net, and a gun rammer. I use binoculars because this thing only has 360 meters of view range, and so that bumps it up to the maximum view range of, I think, 445 meters, as it currently is. I use the camo net because It's got pretty good camo ratings, and if I'm going to be slumming it out at the back of the map, I might as well be hiding my tank as best as I can as well. And I use a gun rammer, pretty self-explanatory. This thing has very poor DPM for a tier 8 tank destroyer anyway, so you bump it up by 10%, and that does make a definite difference. And that's the tank. But tell me what you guys think. Will you be buying this tank? I'd love to know. Leave it down in the comments below, and I'll be reading every single one of your comments and responding to them if they're saucy. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, of course, please do like the video, subscribe if you're new. There will be more videos coming out soon. Finally got myself my new computer, so I'm able to pump out these videos at a higher quality rate, if you guys have noticed that as well. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.